Hello and welcome to Ditch Witch Diaries. We are here and we are talking about trees and excited to say that I think next week we're going to go into poisons. So this, even though we have more trees to go, we could go endlessly. We're just going to throw them back into the mix.
Forever.
Exactly. We're just going to throw the rest of the trees on our
Mm.
list back into the mix. And we are going, but today we're going to talk about some very interesting trees and we are going to have Little Miss Raven start us out. So go right ahead.
So we are covering dogwood today. Ooh. All right. So our dogwood tree, this is what they look like. They are absolutely everywhere out here in Oregon, but not, I don't know if I've really seen a lot of them wild, but they're often used like in front of businesses and things like that. But here's our little dogwood. All right. So the family, I forgot to look up how to pronounce that. Cornusaceae? The genus is Cornus, though.
We'll just go.
Corn, yeah, how would you say it? Cornus? I don't know. There's always so many vowels and it throws me off.
I know.
Um, so Cornus, so lots of species. There's four big ones though. We have the flowering dogwood, we have the Pacific dogwood, the Kousa, and the Cornelian cherry. Those are the four big ones. So some identifiers, the leaves of all of them look very similar. They always have like these veins that always go up and towards the top. A lot of leaf veins kind of just go out to the side, but these ones all kind of go towards the top. And then we have the flowers. So the petals, the thing that looks like the petals are actually bracts, which we'll talk about next. And the true flowers are in the center here. And then we do have fruit, which I'll show you a picture of later. The fruit is like really red, dark red mostly, but it could be white, blue, black. And it looks like droopies, but they're pronounced droops. So the fruit of the dogwood tree are droops. And the color is going to depend on the species. So we've talked about this a little bit before, but I want to kind of revisit it since we haven't talked about it with dogwood before. So a lot of times people think that these are the flowers, but they're not. This is the actual flower cluster. And like I said before, these are the bracts. And bracts, we've talked about before, are modified leaves. And they're leaves to try to get pollinators to come in the exact same way of poinsettia, right? Poinsettia, we think that this whole thing is the flower. It's not. The true flowers are in the center. These are just like altered leaves, like specialized leaves to bring in pollinators. And that's how the dogwood is too. So these are bracts, which are just like leaves. And then this is the flower part, the very center. So this kind of starts off as a little knobby and then it blooms into the flower. And then the flowers bloom into the drupes, the berries. So each true flower in the center is a technically complete flower. So each flower here will produce a fruit, 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 and so on.
Nice.
So these are the four big types of dogwood, and you can see that the carnelian is a little bit, or sorry, not carnelian, cornelian is a little bit different, but the other dogwoods look pretty similar, little differences, but and this one, the cornelian is actually a shrub,
Mm.
generally speaking. They don't get to be very big. And the other four generally have white to pink bracts. They bloom usually like April or May, but this one, the shrub actually blooms early on, late winter, which we'll circle back to in a minute. There's berries, they all have pink or red berries. And the bark looks pretty similar. The location we'll talk about in a second, but this you can see the leaves all look very similar. That's like one of the big identifiers outside of like the bracts, obviously. Okay, so native range, so our flowering dogwood is native to like Eastern North America, our Pacific dogwood native to the Pacific Northwest. The Kousa is native to Japan, Korea, China, and then the Cornelian is native to Europe and Western Asia. I do want to say, I'm going to go back just for a second. So
Mhm.
even though we do have this Pacific dogwood out here, I haven't really seen a lot of them. Most of the dogwoods that I've seen here are the Kousa. That's
Oh,
like the big ones. Yeah, so I'm sure that there are. I live in a very very foresty area where there's a lot of like canopies and stuff. And so maybe I'm just not in the exact area for the Pacific dogwood, but I see a lot of the Causa in like out in the city and stuff.
nice.
Yeah. So just some quick habitat preferences. The flowering likes forest edges, ravines, stream banks, a little moist, not like wet, wet, right? Not like willow, but like some moistness. The Pacific does like conifer forest, so that's why I'm a little bit surprised I haven't seen them. So we have a lot of Douglas firs out here, Douglas fir forests. Allegedly, they're there, forest edges, mountain valleys. The Causa is in like mountain slopes, but commonly cultivated. That's what I see out here. Very commonly cultivated because it's beautiful and it's relatively small. And then the Cornelian is mostly dry and rocky areas, which is why it's like a shrub. Okay, so not a lot of other names, but we do have Cornell spoken or pronounced just like Cornell University. So we have Cornell, Cornelian cherry, Cornell cherry, European Cornell, arrowwood, skewerwood, and whipple tree. So we don't exactly know where the name dogwood came from. There's two theories. One is that dogwood evolved from dagwood because, as we'll talk about later, dogwood wood is very hardy. Um, and so it was used a lot for making dags, like dags, skewers, arrows, pointed tools, things that needed to be in, like would hit impact over and over and over and over and over again because it doesn't splinter and it remains really like sturdy. And so the belief is that it came from dogwood, but then the question comes from like, well, uh, did we use the word dag that long throughout the history of like the actual tree? The other theory is that it's from a folk name coming from because we would use it to wash dogs, but that's less likely. A lot of historians think that the like dagwood is more likely. So it is sensitive to hot and dry conditions. It does not, so probably not a lot in like Southern California, but it is so very sensitive. It does need the moistness, but it is very hardy. It's drought tolerant, so it doesn't like hot and dry, but it could withstand in them if it needed to. It's long-lived and it's disease resistant and considered adaptable. So it's a highly adaptable tree. So let's talk about some legends. So there's the Christian legend, of course, because there's always a Christian legend.
There is
The
in mine
belief
as well.
there's always one, I feel like. They just get their
The
toes in
Bible,
everything.
the Bible
Yeah,
legend.
The Bible Bible. It's the lore is that dogwood trees were once huge, massive, massive trees, and they were the wood was used to make the cross where Jesus was crucified. I know there's a lot of different trees that are like a lot of different
Implicated.
stories of different trees.
Exactly.
Yes,
A
yes,
lot of
but
trees are
yes,
implicated
a
in that
lot of trees are implicated. But this is including dogwood. And so, big, massive tree was cut down to make the crucifix. And then God was saddened by this. And so he transformed the tree and he shrunk it down so that it could never again be used for crucifixions. Um, and also he made the blossoms. Ch he changed them. They used to be like true flowers, and he changed them to resemble the cross. So we have the four. Dogwoods always have the four like petals, right? They're not really petals, but we have the four petals to resemble the cross. And also a lot of dogwoods you'll see at the tips of the four petals have like a pink tint, and it's believed that that is to represent Christ's wounds. And then the flower cluster in the center is supposed to symbolize the crown of thorns.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the only real like direct story that I found of dogwood, but there are kind of like just associations. So it flowers like pretty early before winter has fully ended, and so it is often associated with hope, perseverance, returning of the spring, renewal after hardship, just like a lot of the other trees that we've talked about that flower before spring, very much associated with like perseverance. Um, Again, the wood is really hard. It's a hard wood, which symbolizes strength, endurance, reliability, stability, things like that. We also know that ancient Europeans used the wood for spears, bow, walking sticks, tool handles, as we mentioned before. And it was chosen for those tools, as I mentioned, because it doesn't splinter. I mean, it can, but it resists splintering. If you carve it, it holds onto those because the wood is so hard that if you carve into it, if you use a lot of softer woods for carving, eventually the carving is going to be like rounded, right? It's not such a clear cut
Yeah.
carving, but because it's a hard wood, it holds on to that very like edged carving. So they would use it for carving. It wears down very, very slowly. It can absorb repeated impacts, again, as we saw with like the daggers hitting again and again and again, and it'll remain pretty sharp. So because of all those, it was used for a lot of tools. Here's just some tools. So it was often used for weaving shuttles. This is actually a picture from a museum in, where was it? Scotland, maybe, but it's like an actual dogwood shuttle. And then we have spear shafts, and we also have so whipple tree. So the name whipple tree. Whipple tree is this thing on like horse-drawn and ox-drawn like wagons and plows and stuff, where it looks like this, but this is the picture. And the whole point of the whipple tree is to pivot. So when the animal walks, so that it kind of evenly distributes like the pulling force. And so you need a wood that's able to withstand that constant moving and kicking of the horse and the stress and the push and the pull. And so it was often, often used in whipple trees. And so hence the tree being called whipple tree. We also have some mentions of it used by Odysseus. So some sources say that Odysseus crafted spears from the cornel wood because of its hardiness. Again, couldn't find any exact like scripts or anything, but that's the story. And then we have Japanese symbolism. So most of Japan is associated with the Kousa because that's where it grows natively. And it's less on mythology, right? But more on seasonal beauty. So it represents elegance, quiet endurance, transition, harmony, especially because I'm going to go back and show you like the flowers. But the Kousa is like arguably, I think, one of the prettiest ones. It has really interesting droops, like the most interesting droops. The petals are more kind of pointed and sleek at the tips, and it gets more like bushy looking when it flowers. And so it's used to symbolize like this like calmness and elegance and things like that. And then we have, I do love my Victorian flower language. And so it was used for durability, affection, like affection, but continuous affection, not like honeymoon type of affection, stability, faithfulness, which we see a lot of white flowers having actually. And then Romans used it for military equipment. There is a legend that Romulus threw a cornel spear into the ground on the future site of Rome. And then when he put that into the ground, it took root to become a living tree. And then the tree was the like start of Rome, of like the empowerment of Rome. Okay, so then we have medicinal. Again, not doctors. We say this every time, so use at your own risk. But use at your own risk, not
Yeah.
doctors. So bark is the most commonly used, and a lot of times it's not even actually like the bark. It's not like you go up to like the trunk and scrape off the bark. A lot of times it's harvested from young branches, sometimes roots. But this is the most commonly used part medicinally. So febrifuge, astringent, big astringent, tonic, some anti-inflammatory, and digestive bitter. Um, so we do know that the flowering dogwood was used by indigenous peoples for things like fevers, chills, malaria-like illnesses, re-strengthening. Like if you were sick and now you're not sick anymore, but you're feeling like weak still, they would like drink the a decoction from the bark, digestive complaints, diarrhea. Then we have the fruit. So we have the drupes here. And the drupes are very, very high in vitamin C and also rich in, I had to look up how to say this, but anthocyanins, which is antioxidant. It's like really high in antioxidants. It's also a nutritive, especially because of the vitamin C and the polyphenols, astringent, antimicrobial. Um, there has been some research that shows things like metabolic effects, like speeding up your metabolism, anti-inflammatory, but it seems to be mixed. So, I mean, it could be, so I did want to include it, but not super strong support. Really strong support for the other, though. Now, the fruit of the Kousa, which is this one, right? The one that looks a little crazy. This is not really used medicinally. It's more just eaten as like a snack, but it sounds so good. It says that the taste is between a ripe peach, mango, and a persimmon, and the texture is creamy like a soft banana.
Ooh.
That sounds amazing.
I
Yeah.
know. I want some of that house
I
of
know.
fruit. A lot of
Yeah.
those fruits you can't get from Asia because they quickly go
Mm,
bad or they bruise
yeah.
quickly or something. A lot of them. So
Yeah.
I you have to be over there and be on the lookout. There was another one too that we talked about that you couldn't. I
Mm.
forgot what it was, but if I ever go to Asia,
Sounds so good.
I'll
I
be
know.
on the hunt for
I bet
interesting
there's,
fruits to
yeah, there's
eat.
probably so many good ones. So now the fruits of the flowering and the Pacific, they're not poisonous, but they allegedly do not taste very good. They are extremely, extremely bitter. And they can also cause like GI discomfort and upset stomach. So you could eat them, but they're not going to be good.
Nice.
Yeah. And then we have the leaves and the flowers, not really used very much. I did find some things associated with like using it just as like a wash or like a poultice for like skin irritation, but not very commonly used at all. Something interesting though, so during shortages of the sunchinel bark, which was a huge source of quinine, and quinine I was believed used for malaria,
It was,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, malaria. So during like this high outbreak time of malaria, a lot of people would use this bark for because of the quinine, which helps with malaria. And so dogwood bark was used as a substitute because it was much easier to obtain. And allegedly, it tastes pretty similar, very bitter, has a lot of similar properties, but it does not have quinine in it. So not a good equivalent. But
No, don't.
again,
If you want
yeah.
quinine, do not go to the dogwood. That's
Yeah, yeah.
funny.
Don't go to the dogwood and maybe go to a doctor instead of just trying to use plants if you have malaria.
Yeah.
Okay, so not a lot of deities. The deities that I found, I've only found not even just deities, but spirits, everything. I only found three, and they're very generally just because they're like about craftsmanship. So Ares, obviously, god of war, who used a lot of like tools and weapons. Athena, obviously, for her craftsmanship, and then Odysseus. Those are the only three that I found even like kind of associated with dogwood.
Wow.
Yeah, I like this red one though.
Me too. That's rad. I was
Yeah,
just
it's
gonna
really
say that. I
pretty.
love the red
Yeah,
dogwood. What I know.
yeah.
That's
Red
lovely.
doesn't seem like a very common color for the Brax, but I did find some. But yeah, that looks really cool. I like it a lot.
Nice.
Okay, so did not find much magically. A few things here and there, but element associated with water or earth. Water for like the calmness, the tranquility associated with like the white bracts, and then earth, obviously, I feel like most trees are labeled as earth associations. Season could be spring, which I think makes sense mostly because even though the bracts can like bloom in the late winter, most of the tree is like out and about in the spring, so that makes sense. And then I kind of associate trees that produce flowers or bracts that are kind of like a creamy color as spring. So I do like that association and pink and stuff. Planet is Moon and Venus. Moon because of the color, and then Venus because of like the softness aspect of it. Sign, I did find Cancer. No reason why though. I guess I could see it a little bit. I don't know. I usually associate Cancer with very like nurturing trees though, to an extent. And then tarot, strength, star, and temperance mostly associated with the times in which the bracts make an appearance. So I don't know. I even kind of sat with this one a little bit. I don't really have any strong feelings for associations one way or the other with it. Um, I don't know. Maybe I need to go find a dogwood and sit at it. But
Yeah, I feel like we get that as we get down to the gritty nitty of the trees, like things like this are becoming less available. So
yeah,
hence
yeah,
our shift.
yeah, definitely. Okay, so could I did find and like find in sources and through myself some associations. So protection because it's a hardwood, right? And so it's used for things like tools, like things that you would need for protection. So could be used for things like protective charms, walking staffs, home blessings if you wanted to do something with like some branches or twigs, boundary magic, just like general protective type stuff. Renewal and new beginnings, because it is pretty. She's a pretty tree. So
Yep.
associated with things like spring equinox, home blessings, anytime that you need like a re-energizing almost, like new beginnings, personal transformation, things like that. But in a soft way, right? Not like I'm fucking done, I'm ready to take on to the next step, let's go, but more like that was hard. I'm gonna transition slowly into like this new phase, kind of like very slow, it feels.
So maybe even like the aces
Mm.
in tarot.
Yeah, yeah. Good association. I like that. Yeah. Emotional healing, again, very gentle. The bracts, which again look like flowers, but they are pretty delicate. And if you feel them, they don't feel like leaves. They do kind of feel petal-like. They feel very delicate. And you can kind of see even that, well, you can see it here. But I have like a better picture somewhere where you can see the bracts are it's pretty easy right here. It's pretty easy for them to start kind of like wilting and breaking down. They do act kind of like petals. And so there's very much a softness there. It's almost like rose, right? Where we've talked about like the hardiness and the thorns and stuff, but then the
Yeah.
softness of the petals. The dogwood is like the hardness and the perseverance of the wood, but the softness of like the teeny tiny little true flowers and the delicateness of the bracts. And so that's kind of the association that
I love that.
I have with that. Yeah. Um, Relationships, so composed of four balanced bracts. And so a lot of people associate it with things like that have balance, right? Healthy relationships, mutual support, family harmony, community, because we have the perfect balance of the four bracts. Potentially even something like the elements or anything where you have
Yeah.
like the associations of the four. So for things like what can you actually do with it? So with the wood, you can make wands, staffs, talismans, charms, tools. It would be kind of cool maybe to have to carve like a little knife or like athame, right, from like a
Ooh.
dogwood. The blossoms, so things like spell jars, offerings, ritual baths. I was thinking it might be good to like kind of trim some off and use them in ritual baths.
Ooh, that would
Floral
be like
waters.
floating in the water.
Yeah, yeah,
I
floating.
love
Yeah,
that.
exactly. I had like an image of that when I was writing this. I was like, that would be nice. Floral waters even. Obviously when you make floral waters, make sure that you remove the flower from the water, but floral waters would be good. Moon water infused with the bracts or the blossoms would be good. And then the fruit, like feasts, offerings, you could use that for the fruit. And that's it.
I love that.
Yay.
I love dogwood. I wish I could
That
see
was
one now. I
good.
feel like you're right. We don't have them around here, so I
Mm,
don't really know dogwood, but
yeah.
I would love to see one.
Yeah, they're nice. They really are. I mean, again, I want to come across one kind of like in the wild, but I do see them a lot cultivated. They're like all over school campuses, they're in neighborhoods, they're like everywhere because they are really pretty.
Nice. I love
Yeah.
that. Yay.
Hmm.
Well, I'm excited about I love this as our last like tree for now. I mean, like I said, we
For
have tons of
now.
other trees, so we're gonna
Yeah.
we definitely will be spinning around even if it's like within some other milieu. But but right now like I feel a little like this is our final hurrah. And you'll see why too, because my next is a little different from my normal. So like and
Mm.
subscribe below, and we will see you at the next Ditch Witch Diaries.